Hello YouTube and welcome back to another alternate history video. Today I got the 2016 United States presidential election, but this scenario is between Michael Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York City, and Republican Senator from Florida, Marco Rubio. And so like I said, this says 2016, which of course Donald Trump won against Hillary Clinton. However, this alternate scenario is if Rubio gets a Republican nomination, maybe Trump doesn't run. And Bloomberg runs 4 years earlier than he did in our timeline, and he ends up getting the nomination. Maybe Hillary doesn't run or he beats out Hillary, something like that. But I'm going to say Hillary or Trump doesn't run this scenario, and these two gentlemen get their party's nominations. And I would say Sanders would still run definitely against somebody like Bloomberg if that was the case, but would still fall up short just like he did to Hillary. And so he'd probably still endorse him, though, because they did endorse Hillary after all, even after a bitter primary battle. So with that being said, like I said, it's these two their party's nominations, and national environment was definitely quite divided, especially after 2 terms of Obama. So this would make it for a close matchup, I believe, and Bloomberg would also have his weaknesses, I think, especially when it comes to like economic issues. He is, I guess he still is. I know I was reading in the past he was in favor of the TPP, which Trump was against, and that was able to help him win the Rust Belt, being against the TPP. But Bloomberg was actually for that. He was for free trade, and I think Rubio kind of was like mixed on trade. I think he did actually vote for the USMCA in 2020, 2019, whenever it was when it passed when Trump was president. So he actually voted for that to replace the TPP. So Rubio has actually been pretty protectionist on trade, and I think that would actually be to his benefit, especially in the Rust Belt states. And that would hurt Bloomberg since he was a free trader. He was, like I said, for the TPP. I think a lot of these working class voters in the Rust Belt would definitely see Bloomberg as an elitist. Of course, Rubio isn't really, I would say, the most populist of people either. Sort of like I said on trade, he has been a bit protectionist, but Rubio is a bit of an establishment Republican, but I think he could definitely balance out his support, kind of like what Glenn Youngkin did in his gubernatorial run. He was able to get the Trump support and also do pretty well enough in the suburbs in the state to win his election. So I think Rubio would do about the same here. He would try to balance out his support, appeal to the more Trumpian, more protectionist base in the Rust Belt especially, and also try to appeal to the normal states and other swing states in the Sun Belt. I think it would definitely do well in. So it would make it for an interesting, I believe, pretty close election. But getting into it, I believe these states would definitely stayed in the Bloomberg column here on the West Coast: Washington, Oregon, and definitely California. Maybe Bloomberg would underperform a bit than other Democrats, especially like in Washington and maybe Oregon. But I believe we still keep him over 10 points. So still solid victories there for him. I believe he would keep those states in his column. I believe he also take the state of Hawaii, of course. Rubio, of course, would take these typical Mountain West states like Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, and the state of Montana. Uh, the Dakotas definitely, Nebraska large, the first, third, definitely, and Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, Mississippi, Missouri, I believe, would be over 10, still in the Rubio column. Uh, West Virginia, definitely. South Carolina, I believe, would be solid form. And now some more Bloomberg states would, of course, be like, and I forgot Alaska down there. They'd definitely go for Rubio. Like I was saying about Bloomberg, he'd definitely get his home state in New York, where he was mayor. He was mayor of New York City. And I believe he would appeal well to his home state. I believe he would win the state of Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island. He'd get in solid margins: Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. Uh, and Maine's first district here definitely would go for Bloomberg. Now, these other states would be a bit more competitive, and also forgot Indiana. I believe that'd be over 10 for Rubio. Maybe it would underperform Trump a bit, but I think he would still keep the margin over 10 to still keep it in the solid column for Rubio. Like I said, moving on to these other states. And also, I realized I forgot Illinois too for Bloomberg. That would go for him. I'm definitely going to hit myself for getting a couple states there, but I believe I got all the solid states now after I got Illinois there. So now moving on to these other states. Uh, Texas, I kept off the board. It was like 9 points for Donald Trump, so possibly could go back over 10, especially for Rubio, because I think it would appeal better to the uh, suburbs in the state. Definitely keep the margins in the rural areas, and I think it would improve, like in Tarrant County, where Trump regressed some, especially in 2020, and those places around there. So I could actually see Texas being 10 or above, like maybe like a Romney margin, like it won in 2012. Although Texas still has been trending to the left, so I think it could possibly be around Trump's margin of 9, maybe 10, but I could see it being like at least 10 to 12. Like I said, something close to like Romney's margin. I believe Rubio win above, having no problem there. Some more competitive states, however, would definitely be Sun Belt, but I believe Rubio would do well here, and definitely the Rust Belt and the rest of the southern swing states here. And I believe Virginia would be pretty swingy in this scenario. It did only go for 5 points to Hillary. It wasn't as Democratic as it was in 2020. And of course, she had Tim Kaine as a running mate, so that helped her there. So I believe that'd be a pretty competitive state, too, especially like it was in 2012 when Romney came close to winning it, but fell up short by a few points. So I'm going to start on the Sun Belt here. I believe Arizona would say in the Rubio column. The margin, though, it could possibly be like 5 points, maybe. I think it would do a little bit better than Trump, especially in a place like Maricopa County, which has trended left and went for Biden in 2020 narrowly, causing the state to narrowly go him. But I think Rubio would definitely outperform Trump by a couple points in the state, so I could see it going by at least 5, maybe 6, against somebody like Michael Bloomberg, which if I was going by margins exactly, it would be likely, but I'm just going to fill it in solid red. It doesn't mean it'll be a safe state, but I'll just fill in just because I believe it would go that way. But I believe it would be around probably like a 5-6 point margin. Uh, the state of Colorado, I think, would be sort of competitive. Uh, I believe it was, I want to say around 5 maybe for Hillary. Gary Johnson took around 5% of the vote in our timeline. And Hillary got a plurality of the vote in the state due to Gary Johnson taking away some vote from both candidates. But was still able to get the win because Trump only got 43% of the vote. And so that was around, like I said, a 5 point margin or so. I don't know if Johnson would take away as much vote this time. It could still be pretty competitive, especially somebody like Bloomberg, who's not really as progressive as somebody like Bernie Sanders or even Joe Biden now as president. Has gotten a bit more progressive, I think. He'd definitely be seen as an elitist and more establishment guy, being a billionaire. So I think that would hurt him a little bit. But if I had to go with my gut, I think he could still hang on. But I think it would be narrower than Hillary's win. Uh, Possibly about 2 to 3 points, I think. It could be close to like a 2012 margin, something like that, maybe even a little closer, like I said. I say around 2 to 3 points I would go for Bloomberg, but I think it would definitely underperform somebody like Hillary. And I think Rubio would do a lot better in places like Colorado Springs and the state where Romney did well in 2012. But since Colorado is definitely a blue trending state and still is, I think Bloomberg could hang on by a couple points, but I think it would be much closer than Hillary winning it, even, which is saying something, saying Hillary wasn't the best candidate of all people, but I could see Bloomberg being a little bit much worse than Hillary, especially being a billionaire. That would not do well with too well with progressive voters that back Sanders. But I believe he could hang on there. But like I said, probably about 2 to 3 points. New Mexico, I think would be another competitive one, especially Rubio having Hispanic in them. I think it could appeal well to those voters. However, it's pretty hard to win New Mexico. If you do, then it's really close, like it was in 2004. George W. Bush barely won it, but that was the last time it went Republican. Ever since then, it's voted more Democratic in recent years. I think I would say with Bloomberg, but I think it would probably be in a lean margin. Probably the same deal with Colorado, maybe like around 3 or 4 points. I think it would be a little more Democratic than Colorado, just because of the margin went to by Hillary. I think she won it pretty likely, near 10 points or so. I'm actually going to look at that to see what the margin was. So yeah, this was another state that Gary Johnson took a lot of vote on. Of course, he was governor of this state. He got 9%. Hillary won, like I said, got 48%. So same Gary took more vote from Trump, possibly, only getting 40%. And it was a margin of 8%. So I could see Gary still doing pretty well if he would still run in the scenario, which he probably would, being the governor of the state. So, but I could see Bloomberg, like I said, in Colorado, kind of underperforming Hillary. But I think it could be like around 3 to 5 points, possibly. So like a lean to low likely margin, possibly. Moving on to Nevada, I think it would be the most competitive of these three states that I'm doing now. I could see Rubio winning it possibly if he flips places like Washoe County, but he would also have to run up in the rural areas like Trump was able to do, even though he came up short in winning the state. But Trump kept it competitive by running up in the rural areas. But of course, when Hillary and Biden won the state, they won Washoe and of course Clark County, which is the most Democratic part of the state currently, where Vegas is. But Washoe is not. I mean, it is pretty lean Democratic, but it's not as Democratic as Clark because it has been closer in elections and statewide and federal elections. And somebody like George W. Bush was able to win it in both of his runs, so he was able to win the state. And like I said, Rubio's giving up the rural margins, and he flips Washoe because Bloomberg I don't see really doing as well as somebody like Hillary or Biden. I think it would underperform in Clark. It'd still win Clark, but it could be under 10, so that could be enough for Rubio to flip the state in this column. If he's flipping Washoe County and keeps the rural margins, like I said, Bloomberg will still get Clark, but I think it would definitely underperform somebody like President Obama or Hillary or Biden. Just that elitist feel to him, being a billionaire, I don't really see him appealing as well to working class people in Washoe and Clark County. So I can see Rubio narrowly flipping it by a point or a little less. And definitely, like I said, great Sunbelt appeal. Being a Hispanic, I think, would help him. And so moving on to the Rust Belt here, Midwest more. Minnesota. So this was an interesting one. Rubio actually won the state in the 2016 primary. Believe it or not, I think it was his only win. I think he actually won a territory too. It was either Guam or Puerto Rico. I want to say Puerto Rico. It was one of those territories he won, but the only state he won was Minnesota, interestingly. I think the best part he did in, of course, was like Minneapolis and, of course, the St. Paul area. That was his strength, while Trump did better in rural areas. I could see Marco underperforming a bit in rural areas, not doing as well as Trump, but if he's running on economic populism, that would help him, and it could hit Bloomberg being an elitist billionaire. So that could hurt Bloomberg. In our timeline, the state was only a 1.52% margin. Possibly Rubio could flip it if Bloomberg is that weak. But I could see it getting under a point if it was still Bloomberg by a very narrow margin just because of Minneapolis. But like I said, I say Bloomberg being propped up as, well, being attacked as a elitist billionaire. So I could put the state much closer. Maybe Rubio could pull out the narrow win, but I don't know if he would do well enough in the Minneapolis area to flip it. I think he'd definitely do well in rural areas like Trump did, but I think Minneapolis would be a bit too much to flip it. So I could see that staying with Bloomberg on a very narrow tilt margin. Like I said, possibly it could flip if Rubio's hammering Bloomberg enough on the economic issues, because, like I said, Bloomberg is a free trader, supported TPP, so that would hurt him, especially in Rust Belt states. But I think if Rubio's hammering enough on the economic issue, that could get him the state. But I just think Minneapolis would barely keep it in Bloomberg's column, I believe. But definitely a competitive one, even more than Hillary versus Trump. So the state of Iowa here, I believe would go for Rubio. I don't know if he went as big as Trump would, but he'd probably still keep it in like a low likely margin, possibly like 5 to 7 points, I think. Just because, like I said, Bloomberg, being that latest billionaire, I don't see him appealing too well here, especially with farmers and more blue-collar workers. Of course, Trump was able to tap into that base and turn them out to win these states by close to 10 points in both of his runs. And so I see Rubio winning it too. Like I said, it would underperform Trump just a bit, but I think it would still be in the likely margin, like I said, probably around 5 to 7 points. Like I said, Bloomberg would be just like Hillary and possibly even worse when it comes to trying to appeal to economic and blue collar workers. It'd definitely be that elitist billionaire that Rubio would hammer him on. And I don't think that would fare too well in a state like Iowa that's more populist. Of course, Rubio, like I said, isn't the most like populist senator, but he has been pretty protectionist on trade in the past few years because he did, like I said, vote for the USMCA in 2020. So if he's definitely coming out protectionist on trade in his 2016 campaign, that would help him. So I believe he would take Iowa because of that. And probably same thing with Ohio. I think that could be another likely margin, somewhere around the 5 point margin. Probably about the same as Iowa, like it was in our timeline. Of course, they were both around like 7, 8 points. But I think it would be another state because, like I said, that economic issue that Bloomberg would be attacked on being a elitist, even more than somebody like Hillary. So that would hurt him, I believe, and Rubio would take the state. Uh, the state of Maine up here. So I think Bloomberg would fare better here because it's more establishment friendly, especially Maine at large. Maine's second, though, is more rural and more populist and protectionist. So that would definitely help somebody like Rubio. Maine at large, however, I think would stick with Bloomberg, but I could see it being by a few points. Somewhere around 3 to 5, I think. I think he could do a bit better than Hillary, maybe, because maybe he wouldn't be as unpopular as her, but he would be, I think, more unpopular with the blue collar base. That's why that would help Rubio in the second district, and I believe he would take it. Probably around, I don't know, probably around 5 to 7, maybe. Some kind of like the Iowa margin. I think it'd be something like that. Because Rubio definitely hammer on economic issues. They would definitely try to play to the populist base like Trump did. And I believe that would benefit him, especially against a billionaire like Bloomberg. And so it leads me to New Hampshire. I think this would be better Bloomberg territory, especially being from this region. It is, like I said, from New York. Rubio could appeal pretty well, though, I think, in the state. But even if Hillary was still able to win it against Trump, Bloomberg probably would too, but I could see it being still under a point, though, or maybe at least a point against Rubio. I think it would definitely make it competitive, like Trump was even able to. That's because Hillary definitely underperformed, so that helped Trump make it close. But I think if Hillary was still able to barely win against Trump, then Bloomberg probably would win against Rubio. But I could see it still being under a point, or at least a point, somewhere around there, a point or two here against Rubio. Especially Bloomberg having home region advantage, being from New York, I think would help him. And moving on to Pennsylvania, I think that'd be another state that'd be definitely close. Bloomberg would do pretty decent in it, being from neighboring New York, I think would help him. But I think that would only help him in places like Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. But if he's going to underperform in places like Bucks and Chester, I think he would do okay there. But I could see Rubio improving there, especially better than someone like Trump. Rubio, though, might underperform some in the rural areas like the Tea part of the state and the western part, but I think it would still get decent enough margins, especially because they'd be voting more against Bloomberg than they would for Rubio. And I could see Bloomberg definitely underperforming Hillary. I don't know who would win Erie County. Trump was able to win that against Hillary. Maybe Marco could still win it. And if Marco is winning Erie County and doing better in like Bucks, Chester, Montgomery, then he's probably winning the state. But I think this would be a pure toss-up. Maybe Bloomberg will still take it because of having home region advantage. But I just think Rubio really hit on Bloomberg being an elitist billionaire that would help Rubio narrowly take the state like Trump did against Hillary. But I could see that going either way, honestly. Just kind of below what you think. Same deal as the state of Wisconsin and Michigan. I think those would be close again because of the economic issue. I could see Rubio taking Wisconsin. Michigan would be a bit harder, though, because of Detroit and Wayne County. It's definitely hard to win the state. It would have to be like somebody like Trump and Hillary, like Trump was able to. It was barely a win, though, but I think if Rubio's underperforming Trump a little bit in more rural counties, then Bloomberg would probably narrowly take it because of Detroit. But then again, Bloomberg also supported stop and frisk when he was mayor of New York City, so that could hurt him with the black community, especially in a place like Detroit. So I think that would come into play. I believe in our reality. I apologize for that, but I don't know how well that would help him. So I think it'd be a toss up. Like I was talking about Wisconsin, I could see Rubio pulling off because I could see him doing well in the wild counties like Waukesha, Wisconsin, Washington County. Those are more suburban counties. There have been more Republican suburban counties, but they have been turning a little bit towards the left in recent elections, but still held on for Trump narrowly in both of his runs. And if Rubio's improving that area, I could see him taking it narrowly. I think it would underperform a bit in the Driftless area, but if he's running protectionist on trade, though, that would help him in the Driftless area and rural areas. So I could see him taking it because of Bloomberg not being that great with the working class. And like I said, that would make Michigan into play. Possibly I could narrowly go Bloomberg because of Detroit and its suburbs there, or I could narrowly go Rubio because of rural areas and Bloomberg underperforming in those areas and underperforming in suburban areas even. But I think Detroit would be a little too much for Rubio to win it. That's because he might slightly underperform in the rural areas. But I could see him doing better like in like Grand Rapids, which is trending more Democratic. Rubio could do better there, but I think Detroit would be a bit too much. If it was Hillary, I'd probably give it to Rubio, but I could see Bloomberg being a little more popular than Hillary, which would be enough, I believe, in a place like Detroit to help him win the state. But I think it would still be pretty narrow either way. But moving on here, Nebraska's second congressional district, so I went for Trump, but it got close. And then in 2020, there's a pretty big Biden victory, so it shows how much left is gone now. But Trump was able to win it in 2016 narrowly against Hillary. And I could see somebody like Rubio doing better in it because they do like that more type of Republican because they do have Don Bacon, who is a bit more of a moderate Republican. So that would help somebody like Rubio, and which is why I could see him winning it like Trump was able to. I could see him doing a couple of points better. Kind of like what Romney did in 2012. I think that'd be enough for Rubio because I do like those type of more Republicans. As I said, having Don Bacon representing the district. So I think Rubio would win that by a few, probably 3 or 4. Now we got the last 4 states here: Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida. So Florida is definitely going in the Rubio column. I could say it been by a likely margin. It could even be around 10 maybe. Of course, like I said, he's senator from there. He's really popular. He's always won his statewide races in big margins. I think that would translate into the presidential race, and he would take his home state pretty solidly. Don't see it being that competitive. Like I said, I think it would be over 5, around probably 5 to 7 points. It could even be a little more than that. But I think he would win on a solid margin. Of course, having his home state advantage and doing well with Cuban voters in southern Florida. And, of course, holding his margins in the panhandle would be enough. And I could see him doing pretty well in some of the cities like Jacksonville and Pinellas County. It could probably win that because that tended to be a swing county around the time, and still kind of is. And I believe he would win a solid victory in his home state. And that does put him closer to 270, but it's going to come down to his final 3 states. So Virginia would probably be the most competitive of these 3. Virginia, Rubio almost won in the primary. Trump was able to win it, but Rubio definitely did better in the Nova region, more suburban parts, and I believe he'd do the same here. But Virginia being a bit more Democratic now, and it's still in for Hillary. Of course, she had Kane as a running mate, but it's still a pretty solid margin. 5 points that was even more than what Obama won about in 2012. Although I think in 2008, Obama actually won about 6. But Romney was able to outperform McCain in the state, which made it closer. But it was still an Obama victory just because the northern suburbs still letting them hold on. And I can see that happening here too. I think it would be pretty competitive though, like it was in 2012. And I could see it being by a couple of points. Maybe Bloomberg would narrowly still win it, or Rubio can narrowly flip it. But I could see Bloomberg narrowly winning it probably by a couple of points. Probably somewhere closer around the 2012 margin, but maybe even a little closer if Rubio is doing really well in Nova. But I think Bloomberg would still be a good fit for the region though. That's the Nova region, that is, because he is that establishment candidate. the elitists. So I think that would help him in that place, part of the state, I should say. And I think that would he would hold on by a point or two. But definitely a competitive one, I believe. And that leads me to North Carolina, which Trump won, of course. 2020 I got closer, but 2016 wasn't as close, but it was by a few couple points there, as you see. And so it was by 3 points, almost 4. And I could see that being the same here with Rubio and definitely having a southern advantage being from Florida, which I believe will win him the state, probably around by the same margin that Trump won it by, I would say, just because of the rural areas of the state, of course, and doing kind of well in some of the suburbs. But I believe Bloomberg is still winning the more black areas of the state, which is these parts, those more bluer areas. But I don't think that'd be enough. I think Rubio would probably perform in line with Trump, and I believe that would give him the state in a lean margin, probably around the same margin, 2 to 3 points, maybe 4. But anyway, moving on to the last state, which is Georgia. Now, Georgia went for Trump, but ever since then it's gotten more Democratic at the national level, at least with Trump being on the ticket, and he did win about 5 points, so technically it was a likely margin in 2016. Hillary definitely improved her share in the Atlanta metro area and flipped some counties, but it still wasn't enough because she didn't do as well in them as Biden was able to. But I believe Rubio would do better in those, especially in places like Gwinnett and Cobb. I think he would win those like Romney did, and he'd probably win the state in a pretty likely margin, probably around 5 to 7 points. And definitely being from neighboring Florida would help him win that. So it'd be around the same margin Trump won by, maybe a little bit more, like I said, around 5 to 7, I believe. Due to doing better in Gwinnett and Cobb and holding his margins in the rural areas, and being from neighboring Florida would definitely have his advantage. And so that gives him a win, 296 to Bloomberg's 242. So I thought this was an interesting one, and comment below your thoughts on this, if you agree with this, or if you think Bloomberg would actually win, or if you think this is about what would happen. I think this is a pretty realistic map. Like I say, you could make a case for Michigan flipping, but I think Bloomberg would still be just a little more popular than Hillary enough to still win because of Detroit, places like that. But like I said, if Rubio's really running protectionist on trade because he did vote for the USMCA in 2020, that would help him in places like Wisconsin and PA, and if he's performing better in places like Bucks and Chester, they could win it. Like I said, I think Pennsylvania's pure toss-up, possibly because they'll go Bloomberg because of having home region advantage being from New York, but I got to give it to Rubio because of the economic issue, and Bloomberg, like I said, being really pro-TPP and free trade in the past would hurt him. If Rubio's really hammering him on that in the advertisements and debates, I think would help him. So, like I said, Rubio victory, kind of a close one, definitely closer than the actual timeline, but still a victory nonetheless for Marco. Like I said, if you agree with this map or not, just comment below. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you next time.